As is well known, and I talked about it in the video, a Tory deputy leader switched to the anti-migration Reform UK party. And like Lee Anderson, scores of British Conservatives are giving up now. Well, life in opposition is boring. The Tories now recognize this too. More and more Conservative MPs are announcing that they will no longer be standing for the next general election, which is still expected to take place in the autumn, but we still don't have a date. Given the current poll numbers, you can calculate that they will lose their constituency. If an election were held now, the Tories would only get between 19 and 24% of the vote, according to different forecasters, and while Labour would get about 44%, and the new immigration critical Reform UK party would get 12%. Sunak can therefore prepare his move to California, as British media suspect. So far, only former Prime Minister Theresa May has been seen on the backbenches in the House of Commons. And May, whose compromise for a soft Brexit failed due to resistance from Labour and the Brexit hardliners in her own party, did not retreat into her private life. After her resignation in July 2019 as a member of the House of Commons, she criticised her successor's policies, some of which violated international law. Unlike Boris Johnson, who is restoring his finances with lucrative speeches and now wants to get involved in the election campaign with appearances in Northern England. Or as Liz Truss, who spreads conspiracy theories in front of right-wing extremist think tanks in the USA. But May has had enough too. Last week, as I told you already, she announced that after 27 years she was leaving her Maidenhead constituency for the next general election. According to a list from Parliament, 98 MPs have said that they will no longer stand for the general election, including over 60 MPs from the Conservative Party. MPs have also turned away from the severely weakened Scottish National Party and also 19 from Labour. The Conservatives' departure includes MPs who pushed through hard Brexit with Boris Johnson. Former Chancellor of the Exchequer Kwasi Kwarteng, who together with Liz Truss gave the country a programme of radical tax cuts so that the creditworthiness of British government bonds was questioned, is also leaving. None of them will be held accountable, neither for the botched Brexit nor for the fiscal policy damage of the Truss era, nor for their populist culture of debate that poisoned the discourse in politics and society. And all of this is just to secure the support of the public, which they can no longer even count on now, before the election. Symptomatic of the indifference of these politicians is the switch of Lee Anderson, the former deputy chairman of the Conservative Party, to the Reform UK party. Anderson was appointed by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak because the former miner with his rude sayings and coarse accent was good in the so-called Red Wall area. For many years, Anderson was a trade unionist and Labour member. When he fell out with the Labour Party, he switched to the Conservatives, where his radical views were widely heard in the 2019 in the context of Brexit. Anderson spoke out in favour of the death penalty and complained about the immigrants who were accommodated on the hotel ship Bibi Stockholm. If they complain, they should fuck off back to France, he said. In the debate about Islamist influence on pro-Palestine demonstrations, Anderson said, "They control London and with their cronies the mayor Sadiq Khan." Sunak kicked Anderson out of the party, and since then he has broadcast his views on the right-wing Conservative channel GB News in return for an annual salary of £100,000. 2 weeks ago, Anderson announced his move to what is now the country's third largest party, the Reform UK party. "I want my country back," he declared. "I'm accused of making controversial statements, but I'm just saying what's being said across the country," said Anderson. Without saying it explicitly, it was clear that he and the leader of the Reform Party, Richard Tice, believe there are too many immigrants in the country, too many radical Muslims, too many left-wing ideas, and too much left-wing culture war. In their opinion, the police are not taking sufficient action against Hamas supporters. These are accusations that Labour and the Tories are reluctant to address because Muslims are embattled swing voters. Anderson, who is now Reform's first MP in the House of Commons, claims the party stands for free speech and common sense. Our AfD says the same nonsense. For Nigel Farage, who supports Reform as a former Brexit party, Anderson's arrival is a triumph. In fact, Anderson is fighting for his political future. After being kicked out of the Conservative Party, he would have lost his Ashfield constituency in the next election. With Reform, he may still have a chance of being elected. If not, he too may soon say goodbye to politics overall. Sunak can ignore every single Tory departure. New, previously unknown faces will indeed take their place. Parliamentarians also walked out before other historic elections that preceded a change of government. Before the election in 2010, when Labour was voted out after 13 years, more than 100 MPs, mostly from Labour, threw out their seats. As was the case then, the wave of departures is a sign that MPs are recognizing and anticipating their electoral defeat. The signal is accelerating the decline of the Conservative Party now. After the election defeat, they will have to completely reinvent themselves. And the attempt to score points with migration policy doesn't look good for the Tories either, so even that doesn't work. Because more than 5,400 people crossed the strait between France and England in the first quarter. That's more than ever in this period. A widely criticized British government plan could now have a more difficult time. Because never before have so many people crossed the English Channel to Great Britain in January, March and February of a year. According to the Home Office news agency, more than those 5,400 people made the dangerous journey across the strait in the first quarter of the year. In the same period last year, there were almost 3,800 people, and the previous record was from 22 with 4,500. And this is not good news for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's Conservative government. The government is currently trying to push a widely criticized bill through Parliament with which it wants to save its asylum pact with Rwanda, which is actually intended to deter refugees. When the numbers fell at the end of last year, they felt this was confirmed. The plans call for people who have entered the country without permission to be brought to the East African country in the future, regardless of their origin. They should then apply for asylum there, and there are no plans to return them to Great Britain. However, the highest court declared this procedure to be illegal, arguing that Rwanda did not have a reliable asylum procedure and was therefore not a safe country for those seeking protection. The government now wants to overturn this ruling by law by declaring Rwanda a safe country. Opposition to this comes from the upper house, which made a number of changes to the draft, and this will be discussed again in the House of Commons on April 15th. And if you want to know more, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.